Excuse me, but this clause is a trap. Maya's voice cut through the room like a blade. The meeting room, filled with executives and powerful men, froze. The sharp click of her heels as she stepped forward echoed in the silence. The CEO, Jack Harris, paused mid-signature, his pen hovering over the paper as if time itself had stopped. Maya stood in the middle of the sleek, glass-walled conference room, an unexpected presence among the suits. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was just the office assistant, the girl who cleaned the floors and fetched the coffee. But that day, Maya knew something no one else did. The clause in the merger agreement, the one everyone else overlooked, was a trap, one that would devastate the company's future if left unchecked. Her heart raced, but she kept her gaze steady, not wavering under the scrutinizing eyes of the room. She had always been underestimated, always the invisible one. But not today. Jack Harris, the powerful CEO, and the board of directors who dominated this space, had no idea that the very person they saw as nothing more than a janitor could hold their company's fate in her hands. What do you mean, a trap? Jack's voice was low, dismissive, as he finally looked up from his paperwork. Maya felt the weight of every eye in the room, but she didn't flinch. She had worked too hard, fought too long to let this moment slip away. This clause shifts the liability onto the company without any protection. If something goes wrong with the merger, it's your company that takes the fall, not the other party, she said, her words firm and clear. The room stirred, a murmur of disbelief rippling through the executives. Maya wasn't even supposed to have access to this document. She was only supposed to clean the offices, not interpret legal jargon. But that afternoon, while performing her usual duties, she had stumbled across a copy of the agreement left carelessly on the boardroom table. She couldn't ignore it. She had to read it. This is nonsense, one of the board members sneered, leaning back in his chair. What do you know about corporate contracts? I know enough to spot a risk, Maya replied, her voice calm, unwavering. The CEO's smile faltered as he studied her. A wave of discomfort spread across the room. For a brief second, Jack Harris, who had ruled this boardroom with ease for years, found himself facing a truth he hadn't expected. His company, the empire he had built, was at the mercy of someone he had never even considered. He had mocked her before, assumed she was nothing more than a cleaner, a girl from the wrong side of town. But now, in this moment, he couldn't ignore the truth. His pen slowly lowered, hovering over the paper, but he didn't sign. Silence filled the room again, thicker this time. Maya's heart pounded in her chest, but she stood still. She wasn't just a janitor anymore. She wasn't invisible. She had just saved them all from a disaster they hadn't even seen coming. Jack Harris looked around the room, his mind racing as he processed what had just happened. You're right, he muttered, almost to himself. How the hell did you spot this? Maya didn't answer right away. She didn't need to. She just stared at him, her eyes cold and steady, as if to say, I know exactly what I'm doing. The room shifted, the mood completely altered. Maya had done what no one else could. She had stood up to the most powerful man in the room and forced him to face the truth. Jack Harris, the man who had everything, now felt like a fool. And Maya, the girl who had been invisible her entire life, was finally seen. The silence in the room felt like a heavy weight pressing down on Maya's shoulders. The eyes of every person in the room were on her, but she held her ground. She wasn't nervous. In fact, she felt a sense of calm wash over her, as if she had been preparing for this moment her entire life. For the first time, she wasn't just invisible. She had taken control of the room, and she could feel the power shift beneath her feet. Jack Harris, the CEO, stared at the contract again, his face tightening as the reality of her words sank in. It wasn't just the clause. It was everything that had led to this moment. The arrogance, the dismissive glances, the way he had treated her like a nobody. Now, here she was, the one person who had noticed the trap and called it out. The room buzzed with quiet murmurs, the executives exchanging uneasy glances. The shock of Maya's boldness hung in the air. Jack slowly set the pen down, his gaze never leaving her. How did you even see this? He asked, his voice less sure than before. Maya stood tall, unflinching. I've been reading contracts like this for years, she replied simply. Just because I clean your floors doesn't mean I'm blind to what's going on in this company. Jack's eyes narrowed, but this time, there was a hint of respect in them. The others in the room seemed to shift uneasily in their seats, realizing that Maya was not just the janitor. She was someone with more knowledge and power than they had ever given her credit for. "I don't understand," Jack muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. Maya let out a slow breath. She could tell he was struggling with the idea of someone like her, someone he had overlooked, being right. She had seen this happen before, when people underestimated her, assumed that because of her position, she couldn't possibly have the skills or insight to make a difference. But this time, she wasn't going to let it slide. "You're lucky I found it," she said. "This kind of mistake could have cost the company millions. This isn't just about you. It's about everyone who relies on this company to thrive." Her words lingered in the air, thick with truth. Jack finally looked up, meeting her gaze. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then he spoke, his voice low but carrying an edge of humility. "You were right," he admitted, as if the words were a struggle to form. "I don't know what I was thinking. We can't afford to miss something like this." The executives in the room shifted again, a sense of unease sweeping over them as they processed the shift in power. Maya had done it. She had made them see her as more than just the person who cleaned their office. She had shown them that she was someone who could protect them from making dangerous mistakes. Maya could feel the weight of the moment. She had earned her place here, even if it had come in an unexpected way. She wasn't just the janitor anymore. She had a voice, and they had to listen to it. The rest of the meeting dragged on, but Maya was no longer worried about being dismissed. She knew she had done something that couldn't be undone. She had proven that anyone, no matter their background, could make a difference if they had the courage to stand up and speak the truth. Maya walked out of the meeting room, her steps measured but firm. The air outside felt different, as if the weight of the world had been lifted off her shoulders. She wasn't sure what to expect after the meeting, but she knew one thing. Things had changed. She had always been the invisible one, the janitor with a quiet presence in the background. But today, she had done something that no one in that room could ignore. Her heart still raced with the adrenaline of the moment. She had always known she was more than her job, more than what people saw. But it wasn't until today that she truly believed it. As she walked down the hallway, she passed the familiar offices, the same polished floors, the same fancy desks where people sat and made decisions about the company's future. The very people who had once looked down on her for her job, for her place in the hierarchy, now had no choice but to respect her. Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her out of her thoughts. She pulled it out, her fingers trembling slightly as she checked the message. It was from an unknown number. "Maya, it's Jack Harris. I need to speak with you. Meet me in my office." Maya stopped for a moment, staring at the screen. She hadn't expected this. After everything, after what had happened in the meeting, Jack Harris wanted to meet with her? What could he possibly want? She felt a rush of nervous energy, but she pushed it aside. This was her moment. She had earned the right to be heard. She walked toward his office, her mind racing with possibilities. When she arrived, the receptionist greeted her with a hesitant smile, a stark contrast to the way they had treated her before. "Mr. Harris is expecting you," she said, gesturing to the door. Maya nodded and pushed the door open. Jack was standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline. When he turned to face her, his expression was different from the cocky CEO she had seen earlier. There was something almost humble about him now. "Maya," he said, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "Thank you for what you did today. I was wrong about you." Maya raised an eyebrow, not sure how to respond. She had always known Jack Harris was arrogant, but she didn't expect him to admit he was wrong. "You're welcome," she replied, her voice steady. "I just did what I had to do." Jack nodded slowly, as if processing her words. "I've been in this business a long time, and I've seen a lot of people come and go," he said, his gaze unwavering. "But I've never met anyone quite like you. You've got something special, Maya. I don't know why I never saw it before." Maya didn't know what to say. She had always kept to herself, never seeking validation from people like Jack. But hearing him admit that, hearing him acknowledge her skills, felt like a small victory. "I'm not just a janitor, Jack," she said quietly. "I'm more than that." Jack's eyes softened, and he took a step closer. "I see that now," he said, his tone sincere. "And I want to make things right. I want to offer you something that's been long overdue." Maya felt a knot tighten in her stomach. What was he talking about? "What do you mean?" she asked cautiously. Jack hesitated, then spoke again. "I want to offer you a position here. A real position. Something that reflects your talents, your abilities. Maya's heart skipped a beat. A real position? She had never imagined this day would come, but here it was, right in front of her. She had spent so long just trying to survive, just trying to make it through another day without being overlooked. And now, Jack Harris, the man who had once dismissed her, was offering her a chance to prove herself in a way that she had never been able to before. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I'm listening," she said, her voice steady. Jack smiled, the arrogance from earlier completely gone. "I want you to join the legal team. You've got the knowledge, the instincts. I've been watching you, and I believe you can make a real impact here." Maya felt the weight of his words settle in her chest. This was it. The opportunity she had been waiting for her whole life. She had never imagined that it would come from someone like Jack Harris. But here it was. She had proven herself. She had fought for what was right. And now, she had a chance to step into a new world, a world where she wasn't invisible anymore. Maya sat at her small desk, the hum of the office around her now feeling like a distant noise. She was no longer invisible. She had been given a chance, a real chance, to prove her worth. The legal team's office was much quieter than the bustling floors she had once cleaned. The polished desks and high-rise views were a far cry from the janitor's closet she had spent her days in, but here she was, a member of the team. It was all so surreal. She couldn't help but glance around, taking in the polished wood floors and the sleek furniture. The scent of fresh coffee mixed with the faint smell of new carpet. It was almost too much. She was sitting in a room that she had once only dreamed of being a part of, and now, she was one of them. She had done it. Maya took a deep breath and began going over the files in front of her. The contract she had flagged earlier that day was now her responsibility to examine in detail. It felt strange, but she wasn't going to let the uncertainty stop her. She knew she was capable of this. She had the knowledge. She had the skills. She had always known it, but today, the world was finally seeing it too. As the minutes passed, the door to her new office opened, and a familiar face stepped inside. It was Jack Harris, the CEO. He didn't walk in with the arrogance she remembered. Instead, there was something softer in his step, a humility she had never seen before. He had always been the type of person who carried an air of superiority, but today, he seemed different. "Maya," he said, his voice calm but steady. "How are you settling in?" Maya looked up from the paper she had been reading, surprised by the genuine curiosity in his tone. It wasn't what she had expected. She had prepared herself for more condescension, more expectations to prove herself. But Jack wasn't like that now. "It's a bit overwhelming, but I'm getting the hang of it," she replied. Her voice was steady, and for the first time, she felt a sense of pride in her own words. Jack nodded slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "You've earned this," he said, looking around the office with an approving gaze. "You've proven yourself, Maya. I didn't see it at first, but I was wrong." Maya didn't know what to say to that. She had always worked hard, but the acknowledgement from him, from someone like him, was unexpected. It felt good, but also a little strange. She wasn't used to being validated. She had spent so many years feeling like she had to fight just to be seen. "Thank you," she said softly. Jack smiled, but it was different than before. It wasn't the confident, almost dismissive smile she had seen countless times. This time, it was genuine. "I'm glad you're here," he said, "and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do." With that, he turned and left the office, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts. She couldn't help but smile to herself. She had worked her way up from the bottom, and now, she was here, on the inside, in the heart of the company. It was a long road, but she had made it. Maya sat back in her chair, her eyes drifting to the city skyline outside the window. She had proven her worth, and she wasn't going to stop now. This was only the beginning. Maya sat at her desk, her eyes glued to the screen in front of her. The city skyline outside her window shimmered, the lights of the towering buildings flickering like distant stars. She was still adjusting to the new rhythm of her life. The first few days had been overwhelming, a whirlwind of contracts and meetings that she hadn't been prepared for. But now, as she worked through her new responsibilities, she felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. She had spent so many years being ignored, underestimated, and overlooked. And now, here she was, with a seat at the table, part of a team that made decisions that affected thousands of lives. She couldn't believe how far she had come. The door to her office opened, and she looked up to see Jack Harris standing there. His expression was unreadable, but there was a hint of something softer in his eyes. "Maya," he said, his voice carrying a quiet weight. "We need to talk." Maya's heart skipped a beat. What could he want now? Was there something wrong? "Of course," she replied, setting down her pen and sitting up straight. "What's going on?" Jack stepped into the office and closed the door behind him. He leaned against the desk, crossing his arms over his chest. "I've been thinking about our conversation the other day," he began, his gaze fixed on her. "And I want to apologize again for how I treated you before. I was wrong, and I'm sorry for not seeing your potential sooner." Maya blinked, taken aback by his words. She had never expected an apology from him, let alone one that felt so genuine. It was the last thing she had anticipated. "It's okay," she said softly, though the words felt strange on her tongue. "I understand." Jack nodded, his gaze softening. "No, it's not okay," he insisted. "You deserve more than that. You've worked harder than anyone I know, and it's time the company recognized that." Maya's pulse quickened. What was he getting at? Jack took a step closer, his tone more serious now. "I want you to be part of the executive team," he said, his voice steady but firm. "I'm offering you a promotion. You've earned it, Maya. I want you to help lead this company, to help shape its future." Maya felt a wave of shock wash over her. She had worked for years just to survive, just to make ends meet. She never imagined that this would be the reward, a seat among the people who made the decisions that shaped the world around them. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack nodded, his expression unwavering. "I'm serious," he said. "You have the skills, the knowledge, and the drive. You've already proven that. Now, I want to see what you can do when you're given the chance to lead." Maya sat in stunned silence, her mind racing. She had never imagined something like this could happen. She had never imagined that she would be the one in charge, the one making the calls. It was all so surreal. "I don't know what to say," she finally managed, her voice trembling slightly. Jack smiled, the familiar arrogance from before gone. "You don't have to say anything right now," he said gently. "Take some time to think about it. But know that this opportunity is yours. If you want it." Maya stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. This was it. The moment she had worked so hard for. The moment that would define everything she had ever dreamed of. She had been given a chance, a real chance, to make a difference. "I'll think about it," she said, her voice steady now. Jack nodded and turned to leave, but before he did, he paused and looked back at her. "Just know, Maya," he said, his voice low, "I've never doubted you. Not anymore." With that, he walked out of the office, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts. The room was quiet, but inside, everything had changed. She had been given a chance to step into a world she had once only dreamed of, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. Maya sat at her desk, the weight of the decision Jack had given her slowly sinking in. She had been offered something she had never thought possible, a chance to step into the heart of the company, to make the decisions that would shape the future. It felt surreal, almost like a dream. She glanced around her office, still unfamiliar despite the weeks that had passed since she first set foot in this room. She had come so far, from cleaning the floors to now having a seat at the table. But with that seat came a heavy responsibility. She had always worked hard, but this was different. This was leadership, and it wasn't something she could take lightly. The phone on her desk buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was an email notification, a new message from Jack Harris. "Maya, I know this is a big decision, and I respect whatever you choose. But I want you to know I'm confident you'll make the right call. Meet me tomorrow morning in the conference room. I have a project I want you to lead." Maya stared at the screen for a moment, the words floating in her mind. Led? She had always been the one following, the one supporting. But now, the roles had shifted. She was going to lead. And that thought brought both excitement and fear. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She knew she couldn't back down now. This was her moment. Maya had spent years fighting to be seen, to be recognized for the value she brought to the table. She had fought for her voice to matter, and now, for the first time, she was going to use that voice to make a difference. The next morning, she walked into the conference room with a renewed sense of purpose. Jack was already there, waiting for her. He stood by the window, looking out at the city skyline, but he turned when she entered. "Good morning, Maya," he said, his tone warm but businesslike. "I'm glad you're here." Maya nodded, her heart racing. This was it. You said you wanted me to lead a project? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Yes, Jack replied, walking over to the table and gesturing for her to sit. We've been working on a new initiative, something that could be a game changer for the company. I want you to take charge of it. He placed a file in front of her, and Maya opened it, scanning the contents. It was a detailed proposal for a new partnership with an international company, one that could push the boundaries of what their company had ever done before. This is a huge opportunity, Maya said, her mind already racing with ideas. What do you need me to do? Jack smiled, clearly impressed by her confidence. I need you to build the team, come up with a strategy, and oversee the implementation. It's all in your hands now. Maya took a deep breath, the gravity of the task settling in. This was everything she had worked for, and now it was her turn to prove she could lead. She wasn't just going to sit at the table anymore. She was going to take control of the room. I won't let you down, she said, her voice firm. Jack gave her an approving nod. I know you won't, he said. This is your moment, Maya. Don't waste it. As she walked out of the conference room, the weight of his words followed her, but so did a sense of excitement. She had a vision, and now it was time to make it a reality. She wasn't just going to be a part of the company's future. She was going to lead it. The city outside seemed a little brighter, the future a little clearer. Maya knew the road ahead would be challenging, but she was ready. She had fought for this moment, and now she was going to make it count. Maya stood in front of her new team, the weight of the responsibility settling on her shoulders. This was her first real test, the moment when everything she had worked for would either succeed or crumble. She looked at the faces of the people around the table. Most of them had been here far longer than she had, and yet now, she was their leader. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. She cleared her throat, focusing on the task at hand. Thank you all for joining me today, she began, her voice steady despite the rush of nerves running through her. We've been given a huge opportunity, one that can change the direction of this company. I'm counting on each of you to make this work. She paused, letting the words sink in. The faces around the table were attentive, but there was a subtle tension in the room. Maya knew they were skeptical. After all, she was new here, and despite what Jack had said, many of them were probably questioning whether she was ready for such a big responsibility. She could feel their doubts, but she wasn't going to let that stop her. This project is about more than just business, she continued, flipping through the presentation slides. It's about innovation. It's about pushing boundaries and stepping into uncharted territory. I know that we're capable of doing this, but it will require all of us to work together and trust each other. Maya saw a few nods around the table, and it gave her the boost she needed. They weren't all against her, not yet at least. I've already outlined the strategy, she said, clicking to the next slide. We need to focus on building strong relationships with our partners. But more than that, we need to be flexible and adapt to changes as they come. The world is changing fast, and we have to be ready to move with it. The room was quiet for a moment as everyone absorbed her words. Maya could feel their attention shifting, the skepticism slowly melting away. She was gaining their trust, step by step. I've chosen each of you for your expertise and your ability to think outside the box, she said, looking at each person in turn. I believe in this team, and I believe in you. We're going to do something amazing together. There was a shift in the room. The energy was different now. The tension had been replaced with a quiet confidence, and for the first time since taking this role, Maya felt like she truly belonged. She wasn't just filling a position anymore. She was leading. The meeting continued with everyone contributing ideas, suggestions, and strategies. Maya listened, guiding the conversation with a steady hand. She wasn't just making decisions. She was empowering her team to do the same. As the meeting came to an end, she felt a sense of pride swell in her chest. This was her moment. She had taken the first step toward proving that she belonged here, and she had done it. Thank you all, Maya said as the meeting wrapped up. Let's get to work. As the team filed out of the room, Maya stayed behind for a moment, taking a deep breath. The road ahead was going to be challenging, but she was ready. She had earned this. And now, she was going to make sure they all succeeded together. Maya stood in the middle of her office, her fingers running lightly over the papers spread out before her. The weight of the responsibility was heavier now, but it was a weight she was learning to carry. As the days went by, she became more familiar with the rhythm of leadership. The team was beginning to trust her, and she could feel the change in the air. No longer was she the outsider, the quiet janitor who swept the floors and observed from the sidelines. She was in the game now, and with every meeting, every decision, she felt more and more like she belonged. But with that sense of belonging came new challenges. The project Jack had assigned her was progressing, but there were hurdles, internal politics, tight deadlines, and constant pressure to prove that she could handle this new role. Maya knew she had to be sharp. She had to stay one step ahead, always thinking, always ready. Her phone buzzed on her desk, breaking her train of thought. It was a message from Jack. Maya, can we meet this afternoon? I want to discuss the next phase of the project. I think you're ready to take the next step. Maya's heart skipped a beat. The next step? What could that mean? She quickly typed back, agreeing to meet him. In his office at 2 p.m. The rest of the day felt like a blur. Maya moved from one task to another, preparing for the meeting with Jack. Her mind was racing with possibilities. Had she done something wrong? Or was he ready to give her more responsibility? She wasn't sure, but whatever it was, she would face it head on. At 2 p.m. sharp, Maya walked into Jack's office. He was sitting at his desk, his usual confident demeanor present. But today there was something different about him. He looked almost uncertain. Maya, please, have a seat, Jack said, gesturing to the chair in front of his desk. Maya sat down, her nerves bubbling up inside her. What's going on, Jack? You said you wanted to discuss the project's next phase. Jack took a deep breath before speaking. I've been watching your progress closely, he began. You've been doing an excellent job leading the team, but I think it's time for you to step up even further. Maya's heart beat faster. What do you mean? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Jack leaned forward, his hands clasped in front of him. I want you to oversee more than just this project. I want you to take on a larger role within the company. It's time you became a true leader here, Maya. You've proven yourself, and I'm confident that you're ready for this. Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. This was it. The moment she had been working for, the opportunity she had dreamed about. She had been given the chance to prove herself on a much larger scale. What exactly are you asking me to do? She asked, her voice almost a whisper. I want you to take on the role of Vice President of Strategy, Jack said, his voice firm. You'll be responsible for driving key initiatives, overseeing the direction of new projects, and ensuring that the company stays on track to meet its long-term goals. Maya felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. She had come so far, but this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. I don't know what to say, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Jack smiled, a genuine smile this time. You don't have to say anything right now. Just know that I believe in you, Maya. You've got this. Maya sat there for a moment, letting the words sink in. She had made it. She wasn't just part of the company anymore. She was going to help shape its future. When she left Jack's office, her mind was still spinning, but this time, it wasn't from doubt. It was from excitement. She had earned this. She had fought for this. And now, the next chapter of her journey was about to begin. Maya stood by the window of her new office, gazing out at the city below. The skyline stretched out before her, a sea of glass and steel, each building representing a dream, a possibility. She had worked so hard to get here, but now that she was here, the weight of her new responsibilities began to settle in. As the new vice president of strategy, she was no longer just a part of the team. She was driving the vision, making the decisions that would shape the future of the company. Her phone buzzed, snapping her back to reality. It was a reminder for her next meeting, but she found herself lost in thought. Just a few months ago, she had been invisible, just another employee in the background. And now, she was in charge of overseeing projects that could change everything. It was overwhelming, but it was also exhilarating. The team she had worked with for so long had now become her team to lead. Maya couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. She had earned this. She had fought for this moment, and now it was her turn to shine. The door to her office opened, and her assistant, Rachel, walked in. Maya, the team is ready for you in the conference room, she said, her voice bright but professional. Maya nodded and stood up, smoothing out her blouse as she gathered the papers on her desk. Thank you, Rachel. I'll be right there. As she walked to the conference room, she couldn't shake the feeling of nervous excitement. This was her first real leadership meeting, and she knew that everything she said would be under scrutiny. But that was what she had always wanted, wasn't it? To be heard, to make an impact. When she entered the room, Her team stood and greeted her with nods and smiles. They respected her. She could feel it. Maya took her seat at the head of the table, the familiar faces of her team now looking to her for guidance. Thank you all for being here, she began, her voice steady. As we move forward with this project, I want to make sure we're all on the same page. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but I know we can do it. She paused, letting her words sink in. I've seen what each of you is capable of, and I trust that we can build something great together. The room was silent for a moment, and then one of her team members, James, spoke up. Maya, we all believe in you. We know you've got the vision to take us where we need to go. Maya smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. It wasn't just the words, it was the sincerity behind them. She had earned their trust. The meeting continued, and Maya led the discussion with confidence, laying out the plan for the project's next steps. She listened to her team's feedback, incorporated their ideas, and made decisions with ease. By the end of the meeting, the team was more united than ever. Maya stood up to leave, but before she could walk out of the room, she turned to look at her team. Thank you, everyone. I'm excited for what's to come. As she walked back to her office, she couldn't help but think of how far she had come. From cleaning the floors to leading a team, she had proven to herself and to everyone around her that she was capable of so much more than anyone had ever imagined. Maya was no longer invisible. She was a leader, and this was just the beginning.